Data Skeptic mini-episodes provide high-level descriptions of key concepts related to data science and skepticism. Today's topic is survival analysis and marriages. Dun dun dun.
So Linda, this episode will be released just a few days after our third anniversary of marriage. So have these been a good 3 years for you?
Well, generally, yes, because I still love you.
That's not what I wrote for you in the script.
No.
Well, we're recording this prior to actually reaching our third anniversary, but I'm feeling pretty good about our relationship, and I'll take it for granted we're going to make it that far. But not all marriages stay together. Why do you think some marriages end in divorce?
I think people have differences, and they can't see the other side. And then they just get so set in their ways, or they just keep repeating the same arguments over and over again, and that they just start to make themselves and each other unhappy.
Yeah, I think that's probably pretty true. It covers about 90% of cases, I would guess. So I wanted to study the success of marriage statistically. To do that, we'd apply something called survival analysis. Survival analysis is the study of how long something will persist, and it often considers how different cohorts and covariates impact the survival rate. For example, like in a medical setting, doctors want to study the survival rate of patients that are provided with different treatments. That way they can see, like, is one treatment helping people survive longer on average? Can you think of other places one might apply survival analysis?
Endangered species.
Yeah, that's a good one.
And then at my work, we care about customers who are subscription-based. So how long are they going to stay subscribed to a service?
Really good one. Yeah, those are both excellent examples. So there's several gotchas that can happen here when doing these sorts of analysis. Let's talk about the first one that comes to my mind, which is called right censorship. Let me make a statement and see if you can guess where I'm going wrong, okay? 90% of married people in their 20s are still together, but only 60% of married people in their 30s are together. So what's misleading about this statement?
Well, people might just first get married in their 20s. So they haven't had time to decide that they don't want to be together.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Of course, people can get married at any age, but we know something about typical ages of marriage. And regardless, the chances of marriage ending in divorce increase with time. So the older you are, the more time you've experienced.
I mean, it could be some people think people or kids who get married really young just have difficulty staying together. But then obviously, I mean, two big things are money.
Sure.
And money's influenced by your income, and that can cause tension.
Yep, definitely. Linda, you are on a roll. Those are excellent examples of covariates we might want to consider, along with like ethnicity and race and sometimes religion and stuff like that can all play a factor. How can we build useful models of marriage that can help us learn about it and different trends that go on with it?
By model, what do you mean? Like you're predicting if people stay together?
Yeah, that would be like a survival model. Survival model would help us forecast the success rate of marriages by cohort. And those factors you mentioned could be interesting exploratory covariates. We don't want to just give up and say we can't compare people because they're not the same age group. We would look at their survival rates and forecast one into the future to account for that right censorship. But also we could look at all these covariates. So for example, we could look at couples that go to counseling and couples that don't. And then we could say, well, what is the efficacy of counseling? Coming up with a good model is difficult because the topic of marriage is actually kind of a moving target. For example, in the late 70s, there was a spike in divorces, but it seems to have been caused by changes in the law about divorce. At least that's what I've been reading up on. Similarly, people are now getting married later in life, so that changes trends and it changes the outcomes. And maybe we're getting fewer marriages that were rushed into, and with the assumption that a rushed into marriage is not going to be as long lasting.
But are you taking into account gay marriage or women that are probably making more money?
Indeed, those are important social factors that are going to change the statistics. So in lieu of a fairly involved study, what we can try and approach this is in a non-parametric way, and we would do that with a proportional hazard model.
Okay, so what's a hazard model?
A hazard model has a hazard function that describes the risk of termination events occurring in a given time. Let's say we worked in a factory and we were worried about machine failure. You probably have a very predictable curve because the machine is engineered very precisely. But for marriage, which has a lot of changing social dynamics and all these unknowns and no one really engineered it. It's based on human behavior, which is pretty complicated. It would be hard to impose a known underlying model. So one of the things that's commonly done when studying this stuff is you establish a cohort, so like people that all got married around the same time. And then you can establish a hazard curve for each of those, which just tracks what percentage of people are still married. At every time interval, you measure who survived, and this will be strictly decreasing, of course. Then you can look at how different subgroups diverge proportionately from the baseline.
Okay, so what's an example of a hazard curve?
Let's say you have one covariate, could be whether or not the couple has a significant amount of credit card debt. Or maybe you could bracket it by how much credit card debt they have. And I'm obviously implying here that more is worse. Well, we can agree on that. Everyone agrees more credit card debt is worse, but also that there's an implication that a lot of it could have a negative consequence on a marriage. Not everyone would survive that. So that would plausibly put a lot of stress on them and have a greater frequency of divorce. So the curve is what you've observed, and then you can segment it by different cohorts and see how proportionately they change from the baseline. So another way you could segment it is, I don't know, maybe you could look at cases where one of the members of the marriage gets up really, really early and makes a bunch of noise and interrupts the sleep of their other partner. I'm not saying which partner, just hypothetically one of them that does this.
I don't know what you're implying, but to the audience out there, I get up earlier than Kyle because I work out.
Yeah.
And so I think he's implying I wake him up.
No, you actually do not bother me at all. But getting on topic. So I read this analysis, and I'm going to link to it in the show notes, and it uses the Cox proportional hazard model to study the data from the National Survey of Family Growth. So this is some big survey that asks people about marriage trends and a lot of other things. And a key point of the Cox model is that if the proportionality assumption holds, then you can do analysis on all its covariates independent of the hazard function. So that function, so if everyone has the same trend proportionately, then we can look at all of the covariates independently. We can study any feature we want about marriage.
So what were the conclusions?
Oh, well, for one thing, the odds of divorce is strongly influenced by the age of marriage, age at which people get married. So there seems to be a point of inflection around the age of 23, meaning your chances of success are better if you wait until after you're 23 to marry. Do you believe that observationally?
I don't know anyone who got married at 23 or younger than 23, so I have no idea.
So this particular analysis found that the age is actually also more complicated than that marriage after age 28, you start to see an increased rate, which I thought was actually a little strange. Do you have an idea why there seems to be this golden window within which to get married?
Increased rate of divorce?
Yeah.
Oh, no.
Well, no, we're within it. You were...
I got married at over 28.
No, you didn't. You were 27, I think.
28 something, I think.
Well, we're right on the line. So good thing we got it in. Good thing, yeah.
So do I have any theories as to why? No, I don't.
Yeah, I'm not sure either. But it seems to be there in the data. At least that's what this study found when they were looking at the hazard curves. So these proportionate hazard curves, the way they would look at that is they would line up everybody in the cohort and you plot out the sort of decay. So you start at 100% and it drops down and down and down for that individual group. And then you plot all the groups together. And if they're proportionate curves, then we can say that one group is doing sort of proportionately better than the other. So these are really useful because they're fairly general and they're non-parametric, meaning they don't assume anything about the distribution. All they assume is this proportionality, and it allows you to study and compare different cohorts of people surviving, whether it be marriages, like I hope ours survives, or your company, I hope your subscriptions survive.
Is the lesson that we're supposed to graph it on this chart?
For the mini, the lesson is there exists this thing called a Cox proportional hazard model, and it's useful for non-parametric settings of comparing the survival rate of different cohort groups and checking the explanatory power of different covariates. In the case of marriage, you want to see maybe how couples that go to counseling benefit from that. Certainly some do and still get divorced, but presumably their hazard curve is much improved than the non-counseling couples, let's say. So since I read that study, I wanted to, this being kind of our anniversary, I was hoping I could get back to you on the statistic I owe you. Do you remember what it is?
I don't remember. What?
You don't remember? You wanted to have a 10-year anniversary and I told you no.
Oh, yeah. You said it was like 8 point something.
So shouldn't we celebrate something statistical, like the median length of a marriage?
Right.
So which I had read somewhere was 8.5 years.
So what is it?
Well, that's the problem. I was trying to replicate that, and I cannot. This data is really kind of tricky to get access to and complicated. There's this thing called the Icpsr Data Set, and it was I have just banged my head against the wall trying to understand their crazy file format. So if anyone knows it, I'd love to hear not just how to read it, but why is it the way it is? It is in the goofiest format. I really cannot understand it. But I learned things from other people who analyzed it. I didn't need to analyze it myself. Let's close with maybe one stat. So did you know another recent study shows that married people live longer?
So wait, what was the statistic?
Which
the
one?
median amount of...
Oh, well, I don't know. I can't calculate it. I don't have the source data.
So you know what? I think we should then do 10-year.
Okay.
Because now it's arbitrary anyways.
All right. So 10-year, unless I can come up with this number. If anyone can help me determine, what the true median length of a marriage is and show me the provenance of your results, then I would love to have that information.
All right.
But let me show you this last fact. Interesting. They studied cancer patients. Did you know married people survive longer?
So there's 2 cancer patients. One's married, one's not.
So if you line up people that are basically stratified, meaning equal, they have the same type of cancer, the same severity, all that, married people tend to survive longer. Men have a 27% higher survival rate, married men, and women have a 19% improved survival rate over their single counterparts.
Again, women benefit less.
Yeah.
Just want to point that out.
But this isn't like a sexist thing. This is our genes.
I'm just saying you owe me more.
Okay.
So all those times, it's not equal. Men get better benefits out of marriage.
Well, you can't legislate this one.
I'm just saying, you owe me more.
So why do you suppose married people might survive longer?
Well, I think it's clear because you have someone to live for. And so you're going to try and hang on because I'm not saying if you're single, you don't have someone to live on, you do. But like being married, you have like someone like a coach.
Uh-huh.
And then secondly, they may even take care of you when you're frail.
Yeah, I think that's more
like
of it.
When you're like frail, you basically need a full-time keeper, I assume.
Yeah, or if you fall, like they're there to call 911 or catch you.
Yeah, I mean, maybe it's like germs. It could be as simple as like their immune system's compromised and the partner like keeps the place clean for them.
Yeah, there could be some crazy microbiome thing. I don't know. So what's interesting about this is that's a super complicated question to ask. Why is it the case that married people survive cancer longer than their single counterparts? But a simple Cox proportionate hazard analysis will allow us to determine that happens to be the case without positing the reason why. So.
Well, I just have one thing to note. It must be like something with their actions or emotional, because otherwise men and women should benefit equally. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think it's actually probably a composite of many answers, and clearly some of the men benefit from and women don't.
No, but if you're just comparing men versus women, you said men live longer by 27%?
Than their single counterparts.
Yeah, and women are 19. That's a significant difference. So if there's any action that they're taking, if the woman is the healthier one and the man is the one who's sick, it sounds to me, I would posit that women are doing more to help their partner than vice versa.
Doing more to help their partner than vice versa.
Survive, because they have a higher survival rate. That, or one can posit men just have better immune systems, which is totally not true.
Saying, yeah. Yeah, it's rather complicated, and I don't want to claim that I have any idea, because not only do I not, but I hesitate to say any researcher really has the final nail in this coffin. I'm just throwing out there some thoughts that you owe me. Well, maybe, you could get a grant. Yes, I do appreciate you. So happy 3-year anniversary, and I think a little over 2 years on the podcast. And thanks, as always, Lindy. Thanks for joining me. Thank you, Kyle. And until next time, as always, I want to remind everyone to keep thinking skeptically of and with data. For more on this episode, visit dataskeptic.com. If you enjoyed the show, please give us a review on iTunes or Stitcher.